Y'all don't care a bit about the children they would be bringing into this world, huh? What about what they have to endure to having parents so selfish that kept them knowing it's going to bring them into struggle? Okay, let's have a conversation about it, since everyone's talking about eugenics on this app and how people who are financially not well off shouldn't have kids. I was a child whose family struggled. We had money, but it was spent on things like alcohol and gambling. Because just because you have money doesn't mean that you're going to spend it on your children. Just because someone's rich doesn't mean that they're going to emotionally be there for their child. Just because you have money doesn't mean that you're going to be capable of being the parent that a child needs. AKA Elon Musk putting his kid on his shoulders to block pew-pews. Then we get into the conversation of marginalized communities, specifically Black community in the United States, Indigenous community in both countries, that were intentionally marginalized, that were intentionally put into ghettos, both of them. They were intentionally, like in Canada, the last residential school closed in 96, right? So up until 96, kids were getting put in residential schools by the Canadian government. They were being abused by the Canadian government, by the church. It didn't matter what your income was. If you were Native, your kid was going there. But the very goal of the Canadian government in doing this to Indigenous people was to eradicate them as Indians, to beat the Indian out of the child and make people give up their status, give up their culture, family, heritage, all of it. Now, I come from one of those families where they did give up status. And the generational trauma that was inflicted upon my mother, my grandmother, me, was all due to the government and the church. If my family had been left to their own devices, who knows what my childhood, my life would have been. So should Indigenous people, Indigenous people, in fact, would be eradicated because they were the victims of a genocide. So then let's have a conversation. Do you think people in Palestine should be having children? Okay, you don't think they should be having children. You think that, the whole situation that's going on there is horrible. Okay, do you think that in those moments where they have a chance to connect with someone, they shouldn't be having intimacy? Do you think that they should give up one small pleasure that they might still have? Or maybe what should be happening is should stop being dropped. Because a lot of those people were successful, thriving people. They had money, they had finances, they had a thriving business, and then it all went. And that's the reality, is that you can have money and then lose all of it. So saying that that would protect children from having certain experiences is just not actually true at all, because you can be the victim of so many things that you can't plan or predict. And on the flip side of that, you can be raised by someone who maybe isn't financially the best off, and they can give you the emotional support that you need to be a functioning human. They can protect you, they can look out for you, they can be a solid emotional rock. So then the conversation becomes, is what you think raising a child based solely on financial capability? Or is it also about emotional regulation, emotional teaching? Where is the line for you specifically? And do you think that that needs to be put on every other person who decides to have a child? Because personally, I had my son knowing exactly what kind of parent I wanted to be, knowing that in having a child and making that decision, the life he was going to live was going to be one that I poured intent into. I still ended up divorced. We still end up having to sell our house. I'm still living in a 1-bedroom place. I do well. I make money. My kid doesn't go without. But I was at a park one day, right, with my son, and a little boy grabbed him by the arm and wouldn't let go and was screaming in his face. And I had to pry that child off of my child and remove him from the situation while that child raced after us, screaming and throwing insults and justifying why he was putting his hands on my kid as his grandmother attempted to hold him back. That was traumatic for my child. I can't stop those things from happening. They happen. But I live in a well-off area. That kid, grandparents, they're from this area, they're also well off. A lot of Jewish people had financial means, and then someone decided to take everything from them. They couldn't have predicted that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you can think that you are setting all of the things in place to be the perfect parent, and then life happens. Does that mean that those people that are victims of those things should never have children again? Like, do you think that a government can decide we're going to try to unalive all of you. And that those people should say, you know what, I'm never gonna have kids. Yeah, let's just completely eradicate like us. That's it, we're done. As like, that is the goal of those things. And by saying this, you are insinuating that if a government decides to try and unalive a group of people, that they should just go, yeah, you know what, we don't have money, so we should all just die off. All of you are bringing the thought to like halfway through. You're not really bringing it to the end of the conversation. And that's where it's fucked up. It's like men being like, well, she shouldn't have worn that. And you're like, okay, she shouldn't have worn that. Why? Because a man might grape her. So maybe we should be talking about the men graping. Maybe we should talk about the government's not providing. Maybe we should talk about the 1% taking away from everyone else. Maybe we should have conversations about that instead of policing what people who are trying to do the best they can. And not only that, but people who have less income have less availability to reproductive care. Black women are unalived at higher rates in hospital settings. Same with Indigenous women. Indigenous women, one of the ways that they control Indigenous people in Canada is they sterilize them against their will without their consent when they go in to give birth. Do you understand? You are perpetuating that very system with this thought pattern. You can't eat money. Money doesn't parent. Money doesn't hug you at night, kiss you goodnight going to bed. It doesn't read you books. It doesn't explain to you that it's okay to cry. Because there's lots of people with money out here thinking that they can buy a wife and then they can buy children by paying for her to have children. You think those people are the ones that should be having kids? Those people that are stripping everything out of this world and letting it burn to the ground, those are the ones that should be having children and perpetuating the human race.